today, a bit more about concentration, which we like the word tranquility a bit more than concentration, as you know. And concentration, boy, though, it's such a big project. We can get overwhelmed. We can get discouraged very easily by concentration. I have several times in the course of my practice. This is just such a project. This gathering, this collecting of our energies, the collecting and gathering, the settling and collecting and gathering of our energies is such a big project for our whole lives. We've been going outward, out here, out there. That's lovely. That's not so lovely. How do I organize things suitably out here in such a way that I'll find that home place, that deep sense of contentment? I haven't quite figured it out yet, but I think if this would only stay, if that would only go, if only things would stop changing so much, etc., then I'll be happy. And the practice is beginning to see, this is a part of the starting point of this practice is saying that, although some lovely things have come forward in our lives, have been developed in our lives, it's not completely satisfying. Haven't completely found that deep space of inner contentment out here, have we? No. But the idea of collecting those energies is such a big deal, such a big deal, because our energy is more of like a humming. I think of it as like a hummingbird energy. When we teach in New Mexico, there are hummingbirds on the deck. When we do our deck walk, we call it the hummingbird walk. And the hummingbirds out there, and they're so quick, and they never stay for very long. Buzzing around. That's a lot of what our energies are like. Actually, that's a pretty apt metaphor. Yeah. We're buzzing quickly from one thing to another. We're scanning. We're wired to do that too. It's not our fault. It's part of our evolutionary wiring. To scan, to look for food and for danger, to look for what might be tasty and how we might look tasty to, where the danger is, and how are we moving through this space, through this landscape? So sometimes concentration is kind of moving from a hummingbird space to a kind of thought of this morning, more like a bee in a flower space. Have you ever seen a bee in one flower there? It is moving around a little bit, but it's moving around just a little bit in the same territory, like can hang out there for quite a while, and then it'll settle for on one spot, but then it might just move a fraction of an inch. Settle and taste here. It's called, in Buddhism, it's called Kanaka Samadhi, which is concentration, but it's moment-to-moment concentration. It isn't just staying with one object. One object is one form of concentration, like the breath or sound. The Kanaka Samadhi is where we start to move, but in a very circumscribed territory, from one thing to another in that territory. And that's what, when we talk about the holding environment, the inner holding environment, is that sense of staying within one territory, but within that, there's sensations here, there's feeling here, there's little thoughts in there, sensations, mostly sensations. The attention is wavering, everything is wavering in there, but there's an intention to stay in that territory. Like a bee in a flower, like a bee in a flower. We call it staying in the vicinity, in that general area, and taking some interest in that area. And Now, there's a tendency for us to want to move toward a kind of Kanaka Samadhi a little too quickly because we're not very good at staying with one thing, are we? Yeah? With one object, just with one. And it is good practice, though, to stay with one, to practice staying with one sometimes. Yeah, for all of us, it's challenging, and you can really see how slippery the mind is when we begin to settle on one object. But then we can open up just a little bit, just a little bit, so that it's not too tense, not too tight, not too much of a pass-fail situation, and move just a little bit when you're in the holding environment. Just allow the mind to move in that territory, like a honeybee and a flower, Now I say a honeybee and a flower because we want to invite that kind of sweetness, some sweet approach. In other words, this is not like, oh, I get it. It's like pin the tail on the donkey. Remember that when you were a kid? Ooh, ooh, ooh. And that's again captures that cognitive attitude. I want to get it right. Okay, I want to stay here. Okay, I'm moving here. I'm going to stay here. I'm going to stay here. And that kind of concentration is dry and rigid and cognitive. And again, there isn't that feeling. There isn't that heart in there, in that kind of pin the tail on the donkey kind of move, that kind of orientation, right? Oh, keep it here, keep it here. And that's exactly what we want to get away from and move toward, no, it's more like, look at this. Oh, you see the difference? Oh, what do we have here? What do we have here? Oh, and there's something else arising here. Oh, oh dear. Oh my. So we say this in different ways to encourage you. How do we bring the heart mind into our concentration practice, into our tranquility practice? So that we're bringing that caring attention, that softness, that allowing space, that holding space, at the same time as we're staying in the vicinity. Yeah.